So what is antimatter, really? We tend to think of it as matter's evil twin, right? Some kind of separate, exotic substance. But what if that whole picture is just wrong? What if antimatter isn't a separate thing at all, but is actually an inseparable partner, a kind of geometric shadow that matter itself needs just to exist?
It's a pretty wild question, I know. Well, there's this fascinating framework called the MMU that takes this idea and runs with it. It suggests that antimatter's true role is way deeper and more fundamental than we've ever thought, that it's actually written into the very geometry of spacetime itself. Okay, so to really get our heads around this new perspective, we first have to talk about how the MMU sees spacetime. I want you to forget the idea of a smooth, continuous fabric. Instead, think of something much more, well, crystalline and structured. The MMU imagines spacetime as a kind of crystal lattice, and the fundamental building block, the atom of this crystal, is this shape you're seeing. It's called an cell. The idea here is that every single thing that happens in the universe happens within this incredibly intricate geometric grid.
All right, now this is where it gets really cool. Think of each of these ear cells as having a rich, hidden internal life. It can vibrate and twist in 3 different ways you can see here: an electric mode, a spin-like torsional mode, and a volumetric mode that's related to gravity. But here's the catch, and this is the most important part. We can't see any of that directly. It's like we're watching a shadow play. Everything we observe, everything we measure in our universe is just the shadow these hidden movements cast onto a single line, the one we call the W1 axis. Now keep that idea of a crystal lattice in your head, because here is the single most important rule in this entire system. The points where these cells connect, the nodes, they are absolutely fixed. They cannot move. It sounds so simple, but believe me, this one rule changes everything. And here's what that means in practice. Because those connection points are locked down, the lattice demands perfect balance. Any push in one direction has to be perfectly canceled out by a pull in the exact opposite direction. A twist to the left must be paired with a twist to the right. If it wasn't, the whole structure would just be thrown off balance. So in this model, duality isn't just a neat idea, it's a fundamental law of construction. So if the universe is built on this foundation of perfect built-in duality, what does that mean for matter? Well, this is where that core principle leads to a completely new way of looking at its famous counterpart. And it's where we finally get the answer to that question we started with. Let's go back to that shadow play idea, because it is absolutely the key to unlocking this whole thing. Remember, we don't experience reality in those hidden dimensions of twisting and vibrating. We live on the screen, that W1 axis, and we only ever see the shadows that the real action casts. So here's the crucial point. What if a single, balanced, dual oscillation happening back in those hidden dimensions actually produces 2 distinct shadows, 2 projections on our observable axis? And this is the punchline. According to the MMU, matter and antimatter are not different substances. They are the 2 observable shadows of one single hidden event. Matter is the positive shadow cast on our axis. Antimatter is the negative shadow cast by the very same oscillation. They seem like complete opposites to us, but only because we can't see the single unified reality that's causing them both. Now, this one shift in perspective doesn't just change how we see antimatter. It sends ripples through some of the most basic concepts in physics, starting with the really fundamental question, why does antimatter even need to exist at all? In the MMU framework, the answer is just beautiful. Antimatter is necessary because it's the counterphase that stabilizes the very geometry of spacetime. Without its balancing negative projection, the positive projection we call matter would just be an unstable, lopsided deformation. In a way, antimatter is the hidden partner that allows stable matter to exist in the first place. This also totally changes how we should think about annihilation. We usually picture it as 2 things violently destroying each other. But in this model, it's more like 2 perfectly opposing shadows merging back into nothing. On our observable axis, poof, they cancel out, and that hidden geometric dance just returns to its perfectly balanced, neutral state. It's not destruction at all, it's a restoration of symmetry. And what's really cool is this geometric model connects directly to a real-world quantum property, spin. Remember that hidden twisting motion, the torsional mode? Well, a twist can either be left-handed or right-handed. This simple, inherent 2-sidedness provides a geometric origin for spin.
And when you combine that built-in left versus right with the positive versus negative shadow we see, you naturally end up with the exact particle-antiparticle pairing that physicists like Dirac described mathematically decades ago.
This framework also gives us a neat explanation for why it takes so much energy to create a matter-antimatter pair from nothing. You're not just creating one particle, you're having to power up the entire hidden engine that casts both of the shadows. You have to pump in enough energy to kickstart that whole balanced, two-sided oscillation, which brings both the positive and the negative projections into our observable reality at the same time.
Okay, so let's pull back for the big picture. This isn't just some new theory, it's a new ontology, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a completely different way of defining what the fundamental building blocks of reality actually are. Here's the difference in a nutshell. Standard physics basically lists matter and antimatter as two separate ingredients on the cosmic menu. The MMU argues for a radical simplification. They're not two ingredients. They are just two different views of a single, more fundamental geometric process, one that's been hiding in the very structure of spacetime all along. So, we're left with this really fascinating thought. Antimatter isn't some strange alien opposite. It's the other half of the story, the essential hidden partner that matter has always needed to exist. It's not a separate substance, but simply the negative projection of a balanced dance built into spacetime itself. And it makes you wonder, what else is hiding right in front of us, just waiting for us to see it from a different perspective?